Here we go. Season 5, Balance. After spending months of avoiding the course, not practicing, chasing a run on the simulator for weeks and nothing to show for it, Colon finally decides to confront his complexity with the road. As his style began to develop more and more, the amount of challengers also began to arise. Spending most of the time helping the community, Colon did not practice at all, but it did not mean he wasn't doing so. All that time he had been stuck fighting his complexity along with the dealings of his own life had been piling up on his mental, and during his streams he realized the lack of balance he had been going through in his life. He quickly changed his attitude and locked in, and from the 7 days and onward, from before all the way up until now, he locked in tremendously, more than he already is, and sought to regain control. Overcoming the road, the extreme rain, and hostile drivers, Colon had one last thing to do, and it was to conquer the simulation he has set for himself. And now, if you guys were reading the community post, it says, if you're still reading this, thank you, and holy glaze. I'm not that good. Just kidding. Yes, I am. Colon spent less time focused on battle and kept his focus on what was ahead. And surely all the pressure that was attempted to be put on me backfired, only leading to other drivers being disqualified. Here's the details. Unofficial battles. And so these are all unofficial because I don't, like I said, I don't race anymore. I'm undefeated, guys. I've chose to leave it that way, and I couldn't care less about anything else anymore. So, all these drivers, they had their chance and they didn't make the cut. The best drivers in the world, all of them, came down here. They all came to my section of the world just to have one battle with me and lose. And so that's why I don't really consider anything official anymore, because it's no point. I don't compete with anybody, guys. I'm literally doing this all for myself. This has nothing to do with anybody else. I do not want to be better than anybody. Everybody else, everyone is better than I am. I'm just a regular person, just like all of you are. And so let's start it off. This is a 1990 Honda Civic Si EF hatch. So EF stands for the model. This was a older model, where it was a boxy style Civic. It's older, but this was an Si. It was modded, lowered, but he lost. I passed him on a straightaway. This driver, he lost his cool. I'm not sure how to explain. I was just barely coming out of my house, and this guy, he gets behind me, and I pull up to the first stop sign. I stop, check. I check both sides because that's what you're supposed to do. Why come to a stop sign and not look both ways? Because there's a chance someone could come by from the right side if it was a runner, a biker, an animal, anything. You have to check both sides. Sometimes I even double check it. It doesn't take me longer than 1 more second to double check it. So I do that, and I start going. And then, the space opens up a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 cars starts opening up, and obviously because his car is lower, he can't go through dips as fast as I can. It's that's the thing about lowered cars. And I pull up to the next stop sign. I do the same thing. I start checking, but I see him as he also wants to stop, and as I'm about to go, he goes to the side, and he cuts me off as I'm about to enter the intersection. But he does it so quickly though. Um, he ends up getting in the dip, and it's like doom doom. You know, you see his car wobbling side to side because of how low it is, and then that's where it goes. So Civic driver lost cool and patience running multiple stop signs and slowly goes around me at the stop sign where the intersection was, but his car was low and was dipping heavy into the water flooded dip, causing major loss of time. I ease up behind him again. He runs another stop sign. So this is me. And so he did it, you know, he went like that. I watched him do it. I was like, all right, because I could have easily just like sped off right next to him and done all of that, this and that, but you know, that would have been doing too much. I just needed to pay attention and be patient. Like I said, I don't want to race anybody, guys. I don't have that need to. Not that I want to discredit anybody or anything. And so I just ease up behind him again. And you know, I watch him pull up to the stop sign, but knowing that he's probably not as good as I think he is, you know, he runs the stop sign. That's a disqualification already. He ran 3 stop signs in a row. 3 DQs. I mean, he's nowhere near my level. I stopped at all 3 stop signs and stayed behind him the whole time. So as I watch him try to kind of speed off a little bit, you know, he knew I was gonna stop, so he obviously didn't accelerate as hard as he could have, but he did, you know, pull away a little bit. You know, just like a couple of cars, same way it happened at the beginning. But that's when I decided to make my move. As soon as the distance becomes a little bit more clear, that's when I begin to close it. You know, I move through the turn, I maneuver it smoothly, and I accelerate slowly, and then I start picking it up, and I pick it up, and then okay, hold on, let me undo some of this here so I could do some dramatizations here. Okay, so as the distance comes a little bit, oh crap, the distance starts being made, you know, I start closing the gap. Then there's another stop sign, and as soon as I close that gap, he runs the stop sign, but that's when I make my pass, and I pass him right before he could get to the stop sign. So technically I did run a stop sign there, but he also accelerated as soon as he saw me pass him. He tried to keep up, but as soon as he saw the speed bumps coming right where the Akina jump is, and plus this is going the opposite way. So I told you guys where we hit that one jump against those cars, it was going the other way. Okay? And so as I pass him and I accelerate away, and his car's not fast enough to keep up, even with the VTEC. You know, he's trying to keep up, but then here comes the speed bump, and I take it full speed. You know, almost jumping the car with it. But no, I plant the car to the ground. Boom, boom. Wheels on the ground. And then I see the Civic. He's like, you know, he almost skids his tires. He brakes really hard. And then he has to go over the speed bump super slowly. And I'm gone. At that point, there's already bus lengths, multiple bus lengths. I'm gone. Hitting 40 in the 35. Not even going that fast. But not even the VTEC could keep up. And boom, it was over. By the second bump, I was already almost like, I was hundreds of feet ahead. And that was that. You know, I pull up to the light, I stop smoothly, and I wait. And about 20 seconds later, or however long it was, you know, I'm signaling my victory, hand up, peace out at the window, It was no contest for me. Our light turns green. He follows me into the left. He pretty much goes the same way that I do. Oh, but you know what I realized? I forgot what I was doing. I think I had to go to the store or something, or I was helping the community. I can't remember which one it was. But um but yeah, pretty much around there. I slowed down at the light and I stopped, and I was right there next, or like he was still hadn't caught up actually, because there was a turn which he actually didn't take. So let me explain this one again. So we were both at the light. Almost 20 seconds later, we make our left, and then he's like back here, and then there's a turn. There's another turn with another intersection, and boom, I dust him in that too. And then I'm all the way over here. I'm already waiting at the next light that's at the next right. So we did like pretty much like a S or like a Z, a zigzag through some streets. We're like a few blocks ahead now. And I'm there, and then the light goes, and then I'm sticking my hand out the window because I beat him in the corner right there too. I just remember that I didn't include that. But I was like, peace, peace, and then that's at that point when I said I let him pass. I said, come on, come on. And I was like, sick, and then we're just side by side, and I slowed down. I let him pass, and then I'm just looking at him like, and then he was giving me like the nice, and he was like, that was sick, and I was like, all right, man. I was like, peace, and then he was like, he gave me the look back, and I let him take off. He's like, he hit the little VTEC, and I had to turn around because I missed my stop, but it was friendly. Even though it was kind of one of those situations where there's hostility between drivers, it ended peacefully. And now this is another one. Not every Honda driver is the same. This is another classic Honda. This was a 85 CRX, and this guy DQ'd himself. It was like, I can't remember the color. Whether I think it was on the lines of like a red orange CRX, because it wasn't red and it wasn't orange. It was like red orange custom paint. And this guy was like really trying to get ahead of me. I mean, like I got out of the freeway. I was driving normally, and like this guy really was just trying to get ahead, man. Like I made the light and he didn't. And I wasn't even driving fast. Like think about it. I make the light, and then like not even like 10 or 15 seconds later their light goes, and then that gives them time to still catch up. It's not a huge gap. And I'm like, I drive normally, guys. I get up to speed. A lot of people have a heavy foot, and I won't lie to you guys. Like, you know, um, they don't teach that to people. And that's okay. Like, I see it all the time. That's why people are always like, why does he drive so slow? But I'm like, no, maybe you drive too heavy. Like, that's why all people's cars have all these problems and all of this and that, because they don't take care of them. They don't, they think they're driving them well, but they're not. Just because it's an automatic transmission, you know, doesn't mean it's gonna do everything for you. There you go. Genius. Colon is a. I almost cussed on stream. So let me stop right there. Colin's a flippin' genius. And this guy, like, intentionally broke the law. You know, I was going already like 35, getting up to 40. And this guy's like, you know, you hear him from the back because, you know, most of these guys mod their Hondas. And, you know, he's trying to hit VTEC, you know, and he's getting like 65 in a 40. And, you know, he just passes me, goes, room. And then he slows down once he gets ahead of me. And I'm like, okay. And then the crazy part about that, though, is right when he slowed down, and this was something that I mentioned before too. You guys got to remember that there's been so much uh illegal BS wannabe street racers coming out right now, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that, guys. You know, drive safely, be wary of others, and don't drive like that, guys. It's not worth it. Take it to a track, or like I said, learn how master driving first. Master driving normally first before you guys attempt anything like that. And I don't even advocate for that because I don't even do that all the time, guys. When I practice, guys, I practice safely. I practice regular driving, okay? Okay, guys, if I want to do a hot lap and crazy stuff, guys, that's a different story, okay? So there's no need to do all of this and that, especially on a simple street with lots of intersections within hundreds of feet of each other, okay? There's no need for that. All it takes is for one car to run a red light and boom! A huge T-bone accident. Not worth it, man. So, let me explain that. I'm going 40 and the light, boom. As I was saying, all of that illegal wannabe street racing crap. The surveyors, they know, man. They have all of the analytics. They have my analytics, guys. I provide them with this stuff so they can use it, you know, to catch the bad actors, man. We have cameras everywhere, surveillance, man. I have them filming everything, everywhere, 24/7. There's not one moment that they're not filming, except when I tell them not to. All right? all of this telemetry is being used for good. And I'm not trying to like limit people or tell them they can't do whatever they want to their car, man. But you know, then that's the emissions thing is a completely different thing. I have nothing to do with that, guys. That's all above board, man. Emissions is a real thing. That's why it's so flippin' cold and flippin' hot. Casually hitting 110 in California. Now, and you can only imagine how that revolves everywhere around, okay? If it's that hot in Cali, imagine Texas or Nevada, man. No joke. Emissions is real. You know, there's no saying you couldn't modify within the emissions, but it's super hard. It's not easy, man. That's why cars are not street legal from Japan, because they have to pass safety tests first, and then they have to get the right emissions, because the emission standards over there are slightly different. Not that much different, just slightly. Like there's really only like at most like there's actually no difference. I'm no lie. They make super low emission vehicles, and you know, the only thing is safety is a concern, but it's because safety is more regulated in those other countries. They don't mess around out there, you know. and neither do the best. They don't mess around either, man. That's why I don't take it that way, because you know, you guys, I respect it. You know, you guys want to you guys want to push yourselves in the vehicles, and that's good. So in doing so, you know, the lights are already turning red because the surveyors they changed all the times on the lights to pull up sooner and to sense cars that are speeding and make the cars turn red. I mean, the lights turn red before you even get to it. So I was already prepared for it. I already smooth stopped, but this guy, he had to brake so hard because he was going so fast. The light was red already, and in hesitation, he floors it again, and he's like, boom, you know, like how when you punch a car but you don't hit it on the right note, it's gonna be super rough, you know. Bo, what's up, Bo? And he ran the red light straight up. He didn't even make it across the line. Like, you know, in the yellow, there's a certain point. Like, let's say the light turns yellow, but you're already in the middle of the street. That's where it's not like gray area. It's just like, oh, you just go. You can't stop in the middle of the road at a yellow light if you're already in the street, you know? So in doing so, he was just reckless. And it resulted in in a DQ from any possible contest. He didn't even make the yellow light. So bad CRX driver. Here's another one. This is so I put 2020X Honda Accord because we have no idea which you know, they're all pretty much the same. It's still in the same generation Honda right now. And it's a 2.0 turbo Accord. I've mentioned this. We've beaten a few of those before. And this guy, it was a loss on the downhill. I was coming home from the course. I did a mixed stage practice run, so it's where I do an uphill and a downhill. So it's a forward and a reverse run, starting with the reverse and then ending with the forward run. So then, during the final section, guys, where it's the corner, you know, I'm coming down and I see the Accord come out of the intersection, and you know, I see it and I start to trail it, and he begins to try to run away, but I see that. But you know, my line was so much better than his that I instantly closed that gap, and that's when I had to go for the outside maneuver, and I calculated it perfectly, and so I went outwards, and that's when I cut in front, right there, going for a blocking maneuver, because he also moved outward when I was trying to go for it to attempt a block, but that and then in turn ended up messing up his steering. He wasn't able to take a sharp line as he could have, and so he ended up falling behind as I accelerated past him. and and boom, I was just gone. And he tried to accelerate down the hill as well, but I was just I caught a better you know, I retained so much more speed on the way, and he ended up braking a lot more that it just costed him time. And obviously this guy didn't know the course, and so by the time I was already waiting at the light, you know, it was probably like almost 30 seconds. He just kept trying to tell me, and I just pulled away every single time. You know, it just came down to reality. You know, he was gassing it, but there's only so much flooring a car or whatever, relying on the car's horsepower will do for you. And that's facts. And so this happened right after. Coming down the section where I hit that 80-mile-per-hour four-wheel drift down the whole curvy decline. And for reference, you guys could see Cali Best Driver Season 1, or that I beat the Accord, I think it was a 4-cylinder modded, you know, that kept up until it was drift time. And I told him get good. That was in Season 4. You know, coming down that same section, It was a silver 2008 RAV4, and it was all-wheel drive. You could tell because it had the badges and it had the upgraded trim. You know, those usually come limited, and from what I know, yeah, you know, he saw me coming up the hill, and he decided to accelerate. So that I took that, you know, I took that upon myself. He wanted to test himself, some some action. And so, how do I explain this? We're coming down the steep decline like this. And you know, he was ahead and I was catching up, remember? And I see him, and that's when I decided to start accelerating past him. And he did too. But then right when he saw, you know, there was a stop sign, and you know, we weren't going to run it. So, there's this huge stop sign. And I'm ahead. And you know, he's right there, and I see him brake because I see that was his limit. He braked right there because that was his limit. And there was still plenty of stopping area, and boom boom. And I hit the perfect clean taxi stop. And then like a few seconds later, that's when he pulls up, but he's like, you know, a couple of cars behind, like that, right behind me. And then, or not a couple of cars, sorry, like you know, a couple feet. And we go off again, you know, and he tries to accelerate with me too. You know, I'm guessing this guy was patient because he just wanted to see what I would do. And eventually he started to bring it forward, but then I inched forward back. And that's when it came to the next drift section. And so I manipulated my car and I make a wide maneuver. He starts falling behind, and then I hit a drift. And here, because you guys got to remember, this is after the thing with the skidded tires and the whatnot, so my tires are a little bit worn down, and so there was a lot more wheel slip and spin going on, and there, you know, four-wheel drift, and boom, I accelerate, and I'm gone. Sorry, and I'm gone, leaving him in the wind, and then I'm at the stop sign, and I'm gone, and I'm waiting there. And yeah, it was the same turn where we lost the Accord and where we saved the lower G35 from totally bottoming out his car. He would have scraped his oil pan, and his engine would have his engine mounts would have slapped the floor, sending his engine flying out the hood. That's how heavy that corkscrew is. No lie. And that was on a different day. This next day that I'm about to mention, I think this happened yesterday. So this all happened the day before yesterday. So this was today is Wednesday, so this was on Monday. That's when all of these three battles happened. Or I'm sorry. On Monday is where the Accord and the CRX, the Accord and the RAV happened. The Honda Civic EF happened the night before that. So it was on Sunday night to Monday, leading up to yesterday, which was Tuesday. And so even though I hit that crazy four-wheel drift and literally zero steering, I like took my hands off the wheel just for 1 second, Bunta style, I stayed completely in the lane, drifting through the corkscrew, you know, and then gaining acceleration. So like that. And just okay, I know I'm drawing the car a lot closer, but it's so you could see it in frame. It's just see this, man, this would be like almost 40 feet, 30, 40 feet. And so this would go on to be yesterday. I actually have not ever seen one of these cars before. This is a really new car. This was a 2025 Lexus IS 500 F Sport, and he lost on a braking contest. So here's what it says on the post. It says, I was driving normally, getting up to speed, and I'm guessing this guy was accelerating hard in attempts to catch up, because coming out of this right hand bend, coming reverse out of the speed bump section. So that's where I was telling you guys the Akina jump but reverse, right? So coming straight from that way, and there's this huge right hand bend, so you gotta like, but somewhere around there, there's like this, it's uneven. There's this place in the ground where it's just uneven, like very uneven, and your tires will fly right over it. But it doesn't matter how big your tires are or whatever, it always drops out. And so me, remember how I told you guys I came out with the idea I wanted to conquer the road last night, and I was ready for it. I saw it and I dove right into it. I literally dove right into the car where the car would bottom out, and I knew where it would bottom out. Or not bottom out, but where the car would drop out, sorry. And right there, boom, when the car literally caught like 1 second of air, the car gets sideways for literally like half a second. The tires slip, and then they chirp, I mean. The tires chirp for 1 second, then boom. The way the tires caught gave me insane acceleration. So it was a 4-wheel drift, momentarily. 0 countersteer. And coming perfectly to a stop, about 12 seconds later, I'm already at the light. How do I say it? Like maybe 10 seconds later, that's when you see the Lexus IS 500, and it was a black one. So let me change mouses for this. And so let's say I'm already stopped, and then this guy like, he tries to, I don't know, I guess he tried to like outbrake me, but he couldn't. He realized how hard how perfect he would have to do it, and so he couldn't because he was coming in too hot. He overcooked his brakes, and he ended up about like more than half a car behind me, and really just like, aggressive, like rough, just like his car is like boom boom bogging out. But he didn't even complete the stop. He didn't. It was just like, he was stomping the brake, and the light turned green, and then that's when he let off, and his car kind of like shoots forward a little bit because of the inertia, and then he floors it, and then it was like rough, like it was like you hear his automatic transmission dump. It's like you hear boom, and then the car just like goes right, and he starts going. I'm like, okay, and I stay on him. I'm driving normally, and I stay on him, and we come to the light, to the next light. And he saw me keeping up with him, and so he started swerving, bro. He started trying to cut up, like he thought, like this guy thought he was somebody, bro. He thought this was like, he started trying to cut through traffic and cut off other cars. And then we come under a bridge, and right before we hit the underpass, he rudely passes this Golf GTI. It was like a 2020X. He like goes around it, and that's when I see my opening after he goes around it, and we're under the bridge, and the Golf was about to take off. You hear him downshift, but he saw me. He heard me downshift. I heard room, you hear room, and then he let off. He saw me coming through, and he let off, and he let me get right behind him. And then this guy, he started panicking. He literally hit the brakes super early because we're coming up to the light, and he hits the brakes early to try to, get me to get scared. You know what I mean? But that's when when I make my move. He tries to do that, and he leaves himself open on the right-hand side. And I go literally right side by side with him, next to him, taking up the rest of the lane like that. And then he realized he messed up and that he's not going to be able to keep up. And then boom, I stopped the car ahead of him, and he stops really hard. And then I'm like, it ended up the same way. My car is like half a car ahead of his, and he just looks like a chump. And then boom, 1 or 2 seconds later, right next to him on his left side, the Golf GTI, and me and the GTI are literally like, neck and neck with the parking. And we get this guy, and I look at him, and I'm like, yeah. I stick my hand out the window. I'm like, yeah, bro. I'm like, we got this guy. And then the light turns green, and then the guy in the F Sport, he does the drive of shame. He goes, and then, he lost his cool for a sec. He was like, dang, I lost. It was humiliating. But then, he regained his confidence a little bit, and he began to accelerate again, And I'm guessing he was just trying to test his skill. I'm guessing he knew what kind of car I had. And, usually when people are like that, they, I feel like, I'm not sure. I guess maybe he was just trying to prove his newer generation car was better. But in reality, it wasn't. So he panicked, his panicked aggressiveness cost him in the end. I signal my win, and the GTI also gets to jump on him. Crazy. And so we're kind of coming up onto the end of balance. Or to the end of how I regained balance, sorry. So I conquered the road. We ended up getting into some crazy battles unofficially. And I got to help out the community, most importantly. And we finally got that pilot for community, for Cali driver community. Now here's this is the final battle right here. These are both 2020X, and these were both turbo Infinity Q50S, and these were probably red sports or base models. It doesn't matter. Black and gray, 2 of them. And so as I'm on my way back to help the community some more, I take the scenic route. There's this like one intersection, and it has this like really crazy bend. You make this left turn, and it just turns into like a hairpin, because you're pretty much going in like a 180 degrees. And you're just like, and then it just shoots into a straightaway. And so, I take it cleanly, I accelerate, get up to speed. And I'm not even paying attention to what's behind me. I'm guessing these guys were starting to catch up, because I'm guessing they were awaiting a cross. So I'm making the left, and they're at the light waiting for the right. You know what I mean? And so One second. And so let me continue the story. I take off, and I'm guessing these guys, they were probably like a couple hundred feet away. They were probably driving behind each other, side by side or whatever, trying to catch up. They probably had to hit like 60, 65 just to be able to catch up. And that exact road is actually really bumpy, so you have to like, you know, it's not good for lowered cars there. It's definitely bumpy. So I'm pretty sure either that, and they were definitely like their cars were lowered and modded. So they were speeding to catch up to me. And as I'm approaching the next spot to help the community, that's where they finally catch up. I hear them right behind me. They both have modified exhaust here. Vroom, vroom, that VQ sound or whatever. The vroom, or I can't mimic it perfectly right now, but but I hear them behind me and they're like vroom, vroom, tum, tum, like one of them's trying to like, what do you call it? Is it like a launch controller, like a little two-step or whatever they were doing? And then I don't get pressured by it. All right, I'm not gonna let myself get pressured by it. So I just like keep going and I just signal my right hand turn because that's where I'm gonna go. And so I move, and then that's when these guys he does his little two-step and he launches in front of his friend and passes me, right? So he goes like that. The guy on the left, not the guy the guy on the right, not the guy on the left. He cuts off his friend just to get in front of me right there in the lane, and I almost entered the driveway, but holding the brakes, I see them, pull up to the light, and they both stop really aggressively because who knows, they're just like, you hear the vroom, the downshift, the vroom, vroom, like freaking VQ sounds or whatever. And then, they stop all rough, and they're right there. The line is like right there, and then I almost enter the driveway, and I'm like, nope, and I pull up right next to him the same way we did to the Lexus IS 500, and I literally boom, same thing, 2 feet in front of both of those cars, and they're just like both looking at me in shock, like as if I just did some magic or whatever. And I squeezed right next to them, and I outbraked both of them, for pulling a cheap shot like that. I roll down my window, I give them a piece, and I just to rub it in a little bit, I'm like, peace out, losers. They heard me because it was late at night. It's like dead silent on the road. and then you just hear them rev, they're like rum, dum, dum, and then they tried to peel out, but it wasn't as climactic as the loss I handed them. You know what I mean? And you know, I smooth taxi braked on them too. It was nothing. It was pretty funny. And yeah, you know, they roughly accelerated, of course, because they lost their cool. But not even to top it all off. You know, that wasn't even the cherry on top. To top it all off, as I pull into the driveway and I into the convenience store, um, literally as I hop out, you know, I hear like one car enter the driveway, and then I hold the door open for this guy. It was a black Lexus, almost similar to the IS 500, but it was a 250. and then and then literally 5 seconds later, another car comes in, but from the opposite end of the driveway. It was coming, and then it was another white Lexus. It was a IS. It could have been a 300 or another 250, same model. And it was just like they both parked next to each other, and they hop out, and I held the door open for both of them. They both thanked me, and it was just like really crazy, bro, because it was just like black and white, literally same Lexuses parked next to each other, and it just felt like straight balance, literally. You know, that I got a sense of balance. It was just like yin and yang type of deal. You know, you just can't make it up. You can't. It's too much of a coincidence, right? And yeah, and that's how that night ended out. You know, I held the door open for them, and I had my respect. You know, they saw me hop into my car, and they were like, yeah, yeah, he's one of them. He's good. And that was that. So let me highlight the story.